capital, the two repetitions that are working at once, as I said. One is hierarchy, center and periphery, and the other part, it's this multi-reality, multiplicity. People can actually do what they want, at least it's said in such a way, affect democracy as the way of a certain social bond that allows for the relation between the state, for example, and the civil society. That is something that is really important because the institution of education and culture are in this field. So in this field, in the field of democracy, this double repetition, this grid of foundational and defoundational is actually also repeated, but it's repeated in a certain different way, or with the possibility to coin in democracy two different processes. One process is called actually the war state. So practically I would say that the war state is a new entity instead of the national state. That the possibility of proliferation in the 90s, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and especially with the Balkan crisis, as it was called, or even more better, with the Balkan War, of all these new states, was solved in a different way that we can think. The national state practically in the so-called colonial vision of the imperial history was transformed in the war state. And this war state actually is the one who is making and having all these mechanisms of control, subjugation, and of course, as I said, the necropolitical. Because now it's let live and make die. And the war state is what? Iraq, all what is going on also in Africa in the present moment. This is the war state. Parallel to this war state, to this intensification actually of the processes of periphery and center, intensification of power and capital. This is what the war states do. Exists another process that is part of this multi-reality, multiplicity, this so-called fake autonomy. And this other process is in relation to what was developed by Petit, possible to call postmodern fascism. What this means practically? If we think about the war state is actually a pure fascistic state. This is what is the war state, simply to say. And because it's really having all this question of segregation, governmentality is functioning in such a way, especially in the EU context, new laws are produced daily. And with this new law, practically to the judicial field, we have all the processes of racialization, segregation, sending, deportation. This is how it's actually kept, so to call a certain formal logic. So we could say it's actually a pure fascistic state. But my thesis is that this will be very easy. Because if we will do this, we will lose precisely the war machine that is behind the war state. And the war machine is actually the connection with necropolitics. This is why it's really important to insist on the war state, and also because with this we see that the national state are becoming a certain kind of a puppet states. Because the national state really doesn't have anymore the power. That's what I want to say. If we think about international or global justice, practically today, it's no national state cannot hide a dictator, because the war state is already implying a new kind of governmentality, a new kind of legal system that you cannot hide yourself. The imperial war states will come to take you anywhere in the world. It's no way that, like in the past, in the 70s, we remember the cases, some dictators were actually going in another sovereign national state, and there they were protected until they were dying. This is not the case anymore. So this is why it's important to have this war state. But at the same moment, in, let's say, Austria, in Slovenia, of course, we are neoliberal global capitalism, and we are actually almost a model of this. Or, I don't know, in France, in US and so on, in the same moment is functioning this defoundational repetition. And this defoundational repetition is something that is necessary actually to call a postmodern fascism. Obverse to the logic or to the natural way of thinking about what means these implications, what means these segregations, deportations, impossibility to change anything almost, where people are protesting thousands on the street, but everything stayed the same. So what this postmodern fascism is actually doing? So we have actually a grid. One is vertical, the other is horizontal. One is actually the grid of the world state, and the horizontal is postmodern fascism. Autonomy, you read books, shop, style. So this is this stylish life. For example, Agamben is talking about one part, it's a life without a form. This is make a die. And then you have this life as form. What is life as form? This is a style. You can be hippie, punk, intellectual, and so on, but practically this style means a depolitization. So the postmodern fascism, as I said, the war state it's definitely has elements of classical fascism. And why? Because it has a sovereign leader, there is the sovereignty, people and death as a management of life. But on the other part, we have this autonomy. It's a really individualization. It's a lot of talk today. We practically don't have political subjects, only individuals. Everybody care. It's also this self-governmentality. Like an individual brand, you have to take care about you and so on. So this so-called postmodern fascism is the individual brand. Yes, I come to the end, if I can. And this is the practically postmodern fascism function in such a way that sterilizes the other, evacuates the conflict from the public space and neutralizes the political. So this depolitization is really present through this other process, this defoundational process, that means a process of being not a subject, but just an individual. And in most of the cases, or always, in so-to-call context of the first capitalist world, it means to be a brand, any kind of brand. A brand in terms of name from theory, so-to-call an artist that is part of the market, or just to be some kind of individual who can have a style that you select according to the possibility what you have about the wage and so on. This process has a kind of reference or a process that practically on one side we have deportation, we have segregations, we have actually all these processes really coming near to classical fascism, and on the other part we have the social space, the so-called civil societies completely or almost depoliticized. Thank you very much. And you wanted to ask the question, or?
Just a brief note. I know many political subjects here in Slovakia, so I would protest against your claim that there are no political subjects around. Many. Okay. Do you miss political subjects in your country?
No, I think that the question of political subject is that it's question first of contextualization, what the political subject means. My thesis is, of course, you have political subjects, but in the general, so-to-call process of working, the general way how actually the global capitalism function is precisely on the obverse. So the subjectivity, that was one of the key points of how to think about the first capitalist world, because this is why we talk about subjectivities. This was again produced with all these processes, and mostly in the first capitalist world is becoming today an actually evacuated entity. So my point is not that it doesn't exist a political subject, but that the whole idea of political subjects is through these processes completely depoliticized. So today the subject as is produced is more a brand or an individual, while the political subjectivities has to be, so to call, fought for. It's not as it was in the past, something that was said, especially in the first capitalist world, that everybody who was part, also going back to Althusserlian theory, so is a subject per se. So that being a subject was implementing or part of a certain political agency. My thesis is contrary to you. Yes, it's not a problem, but being a political subject is not something that is natural. It's a question of the process of repoliticization. It's a question of actually a fight and to actually produce a political subjectivity in the social that is completely depoliticized. So this will be the answer.
So you think that the policy and being political subject is something natural?
No, the obverse. It's not natural. It has to be fought for. It has to be.
Dream of having political subjects as something in society which is natural?
No, I think that, again of the verse, I think that today when we talk about politics, in more of the case is actually just a word that is empty in the terms of the process. That practically because of this depoliticization process that is going on in the society is actually necessary to think about repoliticization. Something that actually it's not natural, it is not naturally given, but is a process that actually constructs the political and construct through this process of depoliticization possibilities for the political. This will be my thesis, not that it's something natural. And also even more, that everything can be repoliticized. So doesn't exist a place in society that actually is political per se. Everything can be repoliticized. Every so-called move, if is done in relation to many of these processes, if it's actually tackled at the core, can become a political point. Again, on the obverse, because before, in the so-called in the biopolitical, it was this difference. You have the private, the political, private and public, and some places were political by itself, almost naturally. Intervention in a public space was a political act. Today, at least as I tried to show, this is not the case, because these two processes are working together. So on the one part, you have these processes of really governmentality. On the other part, because of this unbelievable feeling of freedom, that is actually not really a feeling of freedom, but freedom to be a brand, to be an individual. Okay, take care of yourself. If you can live, make your, go shopping and so on. It's really necessary to think that the political is not natural, is not there per se, but actually has to be fought for. And as I said, everything in this case, everything can be repoliticized. Everything. That doesn't exist anymore, this division, that something is already per se political. Yeah? Okay.
Sorry, I intervened because we have one more speaker, and it's planned. This was introduced in the beginning that it's a common discussion after the third contribution. So please be patient, and it's great. It's great that our reactions. There is potential for the discussion, but we have one more speaker, and please let's have respect.